So in this video, we're going to demonstrate the relationship between your lens aperture setting and your exposure time found here. Okay, so the main thing you have to realize is the lens aperture setting is basically a gateway that allows light into your lens. The more this gateway is open, the less depth of field you'll have, and the more it's closed, the greater the depth of field you'll have. We're not going to demonstrate depth of field in this video. We're just going to basically relate it to exposure. Okay, so in this video we have a fan. I'm recording at 1000 frames per second. We are at a lens aperture setting of 2.8 and an exposure of 500 microseconds here. Okay, so as you can see, there's some blur on the edges of the fan. We would have to decrease this exposure time to reduce that blur. So basically what I want to demonstrate here, we're going to take a snapshot. So this is a f2.8 and a 500 exposure, and we'll let that sit down below there, and then we'll change this over to change lens to an f2.0. This is a full f-stop. So now, to compensate and to have the light level the same as with the other setting, we would need to bring this down half. So 500 to 250. So this should be the same exact light setting as the previous snapshot that we took. Okay, so in this snapshot, you can see that we have a little bit of blur from here to here. That's with a 250 exposure and an f2.0. And then in this one we have a greater, it's double the blur, basically from here to here. And this was an f2.8 with 500 microsecond exposure. So as you can see, the light levels between these two snapshots are the same. Okay, now going back to the program here, sometimes people have the wrong impression that your frame rate affects motion blur. Your frame rate does not affect motion blur. To demonstrate this, I will increase the sample rate, the frame rate, to 3,500. Basically all we're doing is taking more pictures at this exposure. So I'll take another snapshot. And as you can see, there's exactly the same amount of blur. Basically from here to here. From here to here. So it's exactly the same amount of blur. The only thing that controls, as I said, the only thing that controls your motion blur is your exposure. Now, your sample rate, your frame rate, is going to determine how high this number can be, your exposure. So if we take our sample rate up to 11,000 frames per second, it's going to tell us that the maximum exposure we can have here is 90 microseconds. I'll go back to 1,000. 250.